For an army to fight effectively, it must train realistically. For more than 2 decades, the United States Army has learned the hard rules of combat in unique war games at the National Training Center, where modern soldiers train to fight. For centuries, armies have practiced the difficult art of war by peacetime training. The more realistic the training, the more effective the learning. Modern mechanized warfare has proven especially difficult to simulate. With its vast scale and its complex blend of infantry, armored vehicles, artillery, and aircraft. In the 1970s, advances in laser technology opened new opportunities to safely and realistically simulate modern weapons during training.
Just kill them with universal kill code.
Like a gun, laser beams travel in a straight line and hit with pinpoint accuracy. Unlike a gun, low-power lasers do not damage the target they hit. Developments in laser technology led to training systems such as MILES, the Multiple Integrated Laser Engagement System. MILES consists of 2 elements, a laser, which fires a beam at the target, and laser detectors, which determine whether the soldier has been hit.
Right, the MILES harness and the halo is simulated for battle purposes to tell when a soldier gets shot or injured. Because every weapon, like the M16 here, has a laser when it's fired and sends out a beam. And when the beam hits any one of these little black sensors here, and you have a buzzer right here that'll go off, and you can't shut it off by yourself unless an evaluator comes and shuts it off for you. And that goes the same with the halo right here. If it hits you in the head anywhere here, then it automatically sets off this sensor right here, and you're dead.
Previous methods of war games were similar to children's games of cowboys and Indians, with soldiers arguing which side had triumphed. The ruthless realism of MILES means there can be no argument.
There's no question of who shot you. It's not somebody's judgment call, well, he shot you first. I mean, first draw wins if you're on target.
Realism is enhanced by coding the laser signal. Each type of weapon, from the infantryman's M16 rifle to the massive 105mm gun on an Abrams tank, has its own special laser code. This prevents an M16 rifle from destroying an enemy tank during a war game, an outcome that realistically is impossible.
Each transmitter puts out its own frequency, and then each MILES system has a brain box which has a list of what frequencies can kill it and which frequencies can near miss it. And so if an M16 shoots at a T-72, it will near miss it. It'll blink once or twice, it won't die, but the computer knows it's an M16 shooting at it and not another tank.
M16 will kill another infantry person, but that's it. You know, it can't kill a tank. It can't kill APC or anything like that. While a tank is a killing weapon on this battlefield right here. It can kill anything and everything.
Just like the buzzer that goes off when an infantryman is hit. On tanks and other armored vehicles, a flashing yellow beacon light signals that the tank has been destroyed. The MILES computer in the tank shuts off its laser transmitter so the tank can't fight any longer. Lasers are invisible, so blank ammunition is used by infantrymen to simulate firing. Tanks use a small explosive simulator called a Hoffman device, since blank ammunition is not practical for tank guns. These simulate the flash and smoke of real battle.
Generally, these lasers have very good fidelity with real systems, and if you get killed, you would have been killed by a real system. I'm very much in favor of it. I don't know of a better way to do it. It's an excellent training aid.
In the late 1970s, while recovering from the Vietnam conflict, the U.S. Army's focus shifted back to its main mission of defending Europe from the massive forces of the Warsaw Pact. Taking a cue from the Navy's Top Gun program, the Army planned a realistic training area to teach soldiers to fight outnumbered and win.
As we evolved as an Army into what we knew we had to be, which is a smaller, leaner, better trained, equipped force, able to do a lot more different things, people also took the lessons of history, if you will, and realized that in all of, or most of our first battles, we have not been as well trained as we would like to have been. And a lot of our first battles in past wars and conflicts have been very bloody and very, very devastating to us as a force. So rather than going into our first battle and learning the hard lessons there, to develop a place where we had absolute freedom of maneuver, that we had unrestricted airspace up to a high level, where we had the ability to shoot live fire, and where we had the ability to have a dedicated opposing force trained in the doctrine and tactics of a variety of potential enemies.
The desire for more realistic exercises was fused with the new laser training technology to form the National Training Center at Fort Irwin. Fort Irwin is located in southeastern California in the Mojave Desert, south of Death Valley. It's a harsh environment, nearly barren but for a few coyotes and scorpions. Fort Irwin has provided the setting for the Army's most realistic force-on-force training since the early 1980s. At the heart of NTC is the Operations Center, nicknamed the Star Wars Building. The Operations Center is linked to the battlefield via satellite, enabling the exercise to be monitored and studied.
The Star Wars Building is used to monitor the brigade operations out in the field, and our primary job here is to monitor operations and be able to graphically take a look at the operations and provide some feedback to the player unit by virtue of tracking their systems out in the field and taking particular shots, that we call them, of certain operations that occur so we can provide them that feedback.
Miles forms the first layer of the NTC network. Each armored vehicle is fitted with a transmitter, which emits a signal that is tracked on the computer screens at the NTC Operations Center.
20 Bravo 26 Tango engaged and destroyed 1 ITV. Over.
We have what's called a B unit for motorized systems and man packs for smaller vehicles, which we use to attach to the vehicles. And what that does is it tells us where the vehicle is tracking. When the vehicle is killed by the Miles system, the B unit automatically shuts down and it shows up as a black box vehicle on the screen. And so it has an interface to the building here, which helps us assess how the battle is actually working and how things are going.
The ultimate purpose of recording the battle is to prepare an after-action review for the visiting units engaged in the mock battles.
The purpose of an after-action review is to bring out lessons learned, what was done in the battle, what was done right, what the unit did not do, and then ask the question why. Why did it happen, or why did it not happen? One of the things that we don't do here is critique, as far as like a hard and fast evaluation. You failed to do this, or you did not do that. We try to get the unit to self-discover the reasons why, so that they can walk away with some lessons learned and take those lessons back to their home station so they can apply it in their training program.
The NTC experience is not all computers and lasers. The other critical ingredient is a realistic enemy force to fight the visiting unit. Here at NTC, the enemy force is called the OPFOR, short for Opposing Forces. Soldiers of OPFOR attend an academy where they learn the structure and organization of a fictitious Coronan army.
Key terrain will be...
The Coronan Army employs equipment and tactics that American forces are likely to encounter in the near to mid-range future.
Warhawk, which is the OPFOR wash.
The equipment and tactics of the OPFOR have changed over the years to match potential threats to American interests. Presently, students at the OPFOR Academy receive extensive training in various modes of combat. These include reconnaissance, artillery, guerrilla warfare, anti-tank systems, smoke operations, air defense, and engineering applications. A good deal of the hardware used by the OPFOR is former Soviet equipment, much of which is still deployed in many regions, including the Middle East. The OPFOR troops differ from actual enemy soldiers in one important respect. They are far better trained. The OPFOR is no paper tiger. Many feel that it is the best mechanized unit in the entire U.S. Army.
Destroyer and to the FD in that order. Task Force Angel.
This has got to be the best trained, best led, and best equipped enemy force that will fight. This is their home turf, and that's certainly an advantage. But they have a very high esprit, and if you've talked to those guys, you'll know that they're very proud of what they do. They like what they do, and they're told from the day they get here that they're special. And that's very important, because if you tell somebody that long enough and treat them that way, then they feel that way. They hate to lose. The OPFOR hates to lose.
The troops who face OPFOR soon realize that they are facing a formidable opponent.
They're deadly, and they're real. They don't care. They're going to walk through you. And if you mess around and give them a half an inch, they're going to take the rest of it. They'll kill you.
The OPFOR primarily uses vehicles modified to resemble enemy armored vehicles. These visually modified vehicles, called Vismods, are mostly built on surplus M551 Sheridan light tank chassis. The T-72 and T-80 tanks serve as the inspiration for the OPFOR's main battle tanks. Unlike the thickly armored T-72 or T-80, the OPFOR's Vismod tanks have a turret shell made of fiberglass. The heart of the OPFOR mechanized formations is their BMP-1 infantry combat vehicle. The OPFOR's BMP Vismods cannot actually carry an infantry squad, but visually duplicate the BMP on the battlefield. The BRDM-2 is a common foreign reconnaissance and anti-tank vehicle. The OPFOR fields captured BRDM-2s alongside Vismods based on altered Humvees. However, it is not the equipment which characterizes the OPFOR, but their relentless training. The OPFOR conducts mock battles week after week, giving them a home court advantage over visiting units from distant bases.
We know the terrain. Command and control is very simple. In fact, everything around here is kept to a simplicity, everything around here, such that whether, like I said, command and control, radio traffic, maneuvers, anything that we have to do is first is walk through, such that everybody understands it, such that if the key leaders are killed, everybody knows they can still keep on attacking and all this. And like I said, the last thing is knowing the terrain. And since we know the terrain, we know where all the washes are, the hills, what we're talking about, where we have to go. So consequently, we had the advantage over them.
The OPFOR units not only have the advantage of training and terrain, they often have manpower advantage. The purpose of the NTC is not to stage a fair fight between equals. It is to subject the visiting team to an experience that mimics the real confusion and stress of modern war.
This is a very stressful place. Stress of the environment. There's not much joy out there in terms of living out there. There's stress in terms of the effects of the battles, time, the lack of sleep. Sometimes you don't always get a hot meal when you think you're supposed to, or your body thinks you're supposed to. And then there's the stress of being told that maybe you're not as good as you thought you were, or that maybe there are some things you need to work on that you didn't think you needed to work on. And that can be very a very up-close and personal experience for guys, particularly guys in our profession who, by nature, are very prideful and have a lot of esprit in their units. And nobody likes to be told they're wrong or that they don't know how to do something very well. So it can be a very humbling experience, too.
Today, OPFOR is planning an attack on a visiting Blue Force unit from the 4th Infantry Division, the most lethal, modern, and deployable heavy division in the world. It promises to be a good fight. OPFOR headquarters is positioned beside a rocky mountain, hidden from the prying eyes of Blue Force scouts. Their OPFOR unit commanders are briefed for their attack early the next morning.
Rotation day 10, the 32nd Guards Motorized Rifle Regiment will conduct an attack from the march through units in contact in the southern corridor, with named phase line in sectors: smash, grind, kill, cut, stab, and crush. The regiment will attack on the following axes. In the north, he'll attack on axes Jug and Typhoon.
OPFOR crews ready their 40 tanks and other vehicles for the next day's engagement. They have no intention of letting the age of their repurposed vehicles keep them from victory. With a hard day's work done, most of the OPFOR troops bed down for the night. But there's no rest for the scouts, who head out into the desert to reconnoiter the visiting Blue Force positions for the next morning's battle. Reconnaissance is an essential prelude to combat.
If your recon is good, you will know exactly what the enemy's doing, and you can plan on several contingencies in case your initial plan doesn't work. If they deny you your recon, then you just have to make a guess at what they have. And a guess, I mean, when lives are on the line, is not adequate.
The reconnaissance indicates that OPFOR will face a task force of about 30 tanks and 30 light armored vehicles. In reality, the balance is even more in OPFOR's favor. As morning breaks, the war games begin. According to plan, OPFOR conducts a feint into the northern sector of the battle area, nicknamed the Valley of Death. They plan to draw out the enemy, then unleash their main attack in the south through a mountain pass called the Whales Gap. But the Blue Force commander is not fooled by the feint. Team Reaper, a small Blue Force armored unit supported by Cobra helicopters, decimates the OPFOR forward detachment as they become bogged down in a minefield. Soon the main OPFOR attack begins towards the Furlong Whale Gap in the south. The force heads out in narrow columns. The dust kicked up by the lead tanks obscures the tanks following behind, making it difficult for the Blue Force to gauge their size. The Blue Force commander sends out scout helicopters to determine the location and direction of the main body of the attacking OPFOR. News from the helicopters prompts the Blue Force commander to call in air support. 4 Blue Force A-10 attack aircraft begin strafing the lead OPFOR tank column as they reach the Whale Gap. Casualties among the lead OPFOR tanks are heavy. Laser beams crisscross the desert in invisible fury as the two opposing armored forces engage in a pitched battle.
They came through and hit the obstacle. The Whales Gap itself was smoked. The first couple of vehicles came through 4 or 5 at a time, and we hit them.
In spite of their losses, OPFOR still has the advantage in numbers. OPFOR commanders conduct a flanking maneuver, and the tide begins to turn. Over a mile away, the Blue Force M1 Abrams tanks swing into action in an attempt to repulse the OPFOR attack.
What they did is they found out where we were at from where we were shooting, fixed us, held us in place and got our attention there, and the rest of them just came around them to the left flank and just walked right on through. And that's the doctrine that it should be. We killed 6 vehicles before they walked on us.
After a half hour of intense fighting, the OPFOR overwhelms the blue tank force and charges ahead. But few OPFOR armored vehicles have reached the objective due to the Blue Force's tenacious defense.
As it turned out, I believe we were able to attrit about 1/2 of that regiment. Total, we killed, I believe, 40 to 50 tanks, and then about 80 to 90 light armored vehicles. My combat power was 13 tanks starting out because of prior missions, and so I was extremely pleased with the way the task force did. They were able to mass fires, they were able to reposition within the battle sector, so we were very happy with the exercise, and the soldiers, particularly at their level, observed the standards and did well.
As the war games end, the Blue Force soldiers will return to their home base, knowing that they have faced the best. There are no cheap and easy victories at the NTC. In actual combat, these lessons would come at a high cost in men and machines. Priceless lessons in bloodless battles are the real victories of desert war games.